We are about to begin our next lecture on the Zohar. We are in the introduction to the Zohar, about to study together chapters 7 and 8, both of which are relatively short. So I'm combining these two into one lecture. The last one was long. We divided it in two, so now we're doing the opposite. Welcome and thank you for joining me. I deeply appreciate everyone who's taking the time to study together with me. And please don't hesitate from commenting online on the YouTube. I will try my best to respond to all reasonable comments. And you can also email me offline at weinrebsaul@gmail.com. That is WEINREBSAUL @gmail.com. And I will do my best to communicate with, like I said, all reasonable comments. The chapter 7 continues the idea of different expositions on the word Bereshit, on the word in the beginning, referring, of course, to the first word of the Torah, which is where God creates the world, which is a very, for many obvious reasons, a primary focus, of course, of a lot of Kabbalistic literature. And we are introduced to another person, another figure in the Zohar, is Rabbi Yudai, right? So Bereshit, the word Bereshit, Rabbi Yudai Amar, Rabbi Yudai, Rabbi Judah, he says he expounded as follows. My Bereshit, what does it mean, Bereshit, in the beginning? B'chachma, with wisdom. Now, Rabbi Yudai here is it's quite clearly, obviously referring to the book of Proverbs in Sefer Mishlei. And we find this throughout Chazal, throughout the rabbinic literature, the idea that the world was created with chachma, with wisdom, and it doesn't come from nowhere. If one looks in Proverbs Mishlei chapter 8, verse 22 through, I think it's verse 30 or so, verse 30, 31, just might be worth looking at there. The speaker in chapter 8 of Proverbs is the mythical being called Chachma, wisdom. Wisdom is depicted as a woman, and she is speaking about the virtues of following her path in life, the path of wisdom. And wisdom states, I'm reading verse 22 in Mishlei Adonai Kanani Reishit Darko, right? God created me in the beginning of his way, and right, Kadam mifalav me'az, before he created all of his works back then in the old days. Me'olam nisachti me'rosh mikad me'aretz, before the earth was created, mikad me'aretz, I was formed, wisdom was formed. So wisdom is depicted, the verses continue, before all the creations of the world and so on and so forth, wisdom was created. The idea being, and of course, Chazal, the sages, identify wisdom with the Torah, and state that the Torah was created before the world. It was, so to speak, the blueprint of the world. So Chachma is being depicted by Mishlei as the wisdom with which God created the world. And that can be looked at in a more scientific, less spiritual way. The wisdom, the laws of nature with which the world was created, with which the world is built, that was the master plan, and then the world was put into motion, set by all of that wisdom. So over here in the Zohar, Rabbi Yudai is drawing directly from Tanakh. And he's saying, "B'chachma, da chachma, this is wisdom, da alma kaima Allah, because the world is established on the basis of wisdom. Li Allah goy razin setimin ilain, and through wisdom, right, is revealed many elevated and lofty secrets." So the idea being that through wisdom created the world, so therefore we now need to look into the world and find how we can get past the physical world around us and find the wisdom that is contained within it. And those are these special secrets. Vihacha iglifu shit sitrin ravrevin ilain diminhon nafik kola. And in here is the 6 great directions, right? That from them, from all of these great directions, all existence comes out of. The directions are, of course, north, south, east, west, right? Up and down, right? The 6 directions refer to the 3 dimensions within which all of existence exists. The minhon is avidu shit mikorin v'nachlin, because these, right, directions from them issue the 6 sources and rivers, the 6 sources and rivers that exist in the world. Now, the 6 rivers, the 6 sources, is really a it's hard to pinpoint. We know we're famous. We find it a little bit later in Bereshit. We find the 4 rivers that issue forth from Gan Eden. Those are 4 rivers. But where do we get 6 from? It's probably, the origin of this is probably from the Heichalot literature. The Heichalot literature is literature, Kabbalistic literature that preceded the Zohar. And much of the Zohar, of course, relies on earlier Kabbalistic literature as a source, and not clear when it was written, but it was certainly known at the time of the Gaonim, the Gaonic period. So we're looking at somewhere anywhere between the 3rd century and the 7th or 8th century, somewhere in that time period, the Hechalot literature appears, and it appears. And the Hechalot Rabbati, which is one of the major works of Hechalot literature, which is attributed to Rabbi Yishmael, right? The pattern of attributing Kabbalistic works to the earlier Tanaim, to the rabbis of the Mishnah, is a pattern which, of course, the Zohar takes, but this idea was preceded the Zohar. Now, in the Hechalot literature, there is a reference to 6 rivers that flow forth from God. I'm just going to read some of the language. Naharei Sason, the rivers of Sason, of joy. Narei Simcha, the rivers of happiness. Narei Gila, of rejoicing. Narei Ava, the rivers of love. Narei Didas, the rivers of friendship. That come forth, right, from God. They pour out from the holy throne, and they pass through the gates of the 7th heaven. And we're going to see in a minute gates. So we see these rivers flowing forth, and there's 6 listed there. Now, if 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, there's 6 there. Nare Sason, Nare Simcha, Nare Gila, Nare Ava, Nare Ratzon, Nare Yedidos. Right, so those are the 6 that are listed there. Probably the Zohar is drawing upon that for those 6 rivers. And especially when we see in a minute the idea of the gates, we're going to see that soon as well. The La'ala Goyama Rabba. And where do those 6 flow into? They flow into the great sea, because all rivers flow into the sea. Vahainu Barashit. And that is why it's the word Bereshit can be divided into 2 words: bara, created, and shit, which is the Aramaic word for 6, is shit. Now, which is interesting because the Torah was written in Hebrew, not in Aramaic. At least this part of the Torah was written in Hebrew, not Aramaic. And the letter shit has a much later origin than the origin of the words of the Torah. But we'll find many times that the Zohar uses Aramaic words and finds hints in the Torah for them. So mehacha, so what does it mean? He created 6. Mehacha is beriu, right? From here, this was created. Man bara alone, right? Who was the one who created them? Hahu delo idkar, hahu satim delo yedia. The one who is not recognized, the one who we cannot see, who is hidden, that cannot be known. That would be, of course, God himself was the creator. So this is chapter 7. And chapter 8 will continue a little bit on this idea of barashit. He created 6, these 6 pathways. but he's going to go off into an area which is even more mysterious. Now, if those of you that have been studying with me until now would have noticed that I'm deliberately not taking the path that many of the Kabbalistic commentaries of Zohar take, of using what's really which is, it's not necessarily a bad path what they take, it's just not the path that I'm taking, of explaining the Zohar by using the themes which the Zohar has not yet introduced, and themes which Kabbalistic themes, such as the themes of the 10 Sefirot, which we will get to them when the Zohar discusses the Sefirot and so on. But they say that when it says rivers, it's referring to X, Y, Z. Specifically, if you look in the Sulam by Rabbi Yehuda Ashlag, and a lot of that is taking Lurianic Kabbalah and using it, which was developed by the school of the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, and those who preceded him, or Moshe Cordovero, and many others. And then they took the Zohar and understood the Zohar as if it was teaching Lurianic Kabbalah. That's not, which is fine, and I'm not against that approach. Well, or maybe I'm a little bit against that approach, but I'm trying to do my best to learn the Zohar for what the Zohar is. Had I been alive in the time when the Zohar was revealed by Rabbi Moshe de Leon, and had I picked up a pamphlet in which it was written and started to read it, I'm trying to approach it and having had been familiar with the literature that was available until then, and all of the rabbinic literature and the Kabbalistic literature, like I just remembered the Hechalot, right? Trying to read the Zohar, what would I read? What would I see? I wouldn't see in it different Sefirot and so on. When I'm reading about the 6 rivers, I would see in it the 6 rivers of the Hechalot literature that I'm familiar with, possibly, but I wouldn't necessarily have seen things, ideas and concepts that were developed later and then pushed into the Zohar. So I want to absorb the Zohar as the Zohar is teaching the Zohar's ideas, and as the Zohar introduces those ideas, which eventually developed into the Lurianic system and many other systems, then we can understand it much better. So again, I'm reading the Zohar for the Zohar as the best as I can. In a similar way, for those of you that have studied with me other things, we studied Rambam together, when we studied Kuzari together, which I'm in the middle of teaching. If you see on my channel all these other videos, and when we study Tanakh, the words of the prophets, I try my best to understand the words for what they are teaching within the context that they are teaching it. And this is, of course, not to negate all the many commentaries and approaches to it. Everyone has their place, but this is what I'm trying my best to teach. I'm teaching Zohar. So Rabbi Hiyyah and Rabbi Yose, this is chapter 8. Rabbi Hiyyah and Rabbi Yose were then Habu Azli B'Orcha were walking on the road. So these are 2 new rabbinic figures familiar to us from Chazal, from the Mishnah and the Talmud. Kadmatu l'chad bechakal. They reached a certain field. Amar le Rabbi Chiya Rabbi Yose. So Rabbi Chiya said to Rabbi Yose, Hadi amrisu barashis. That which you said, that Bereshit is really a barashit, that God created 6. Certainly that's a good way of looking at it, right? That God created 6 something. And from some sort of entity of 6, the world was created. Begin the shit yomen ilayin gabi oraisa v'lo yatir, because the Torah speaks, when it speaks about the 6 days of creation, there are 6 days upon which God created, and no more than that. Acharonin setimeninun, the rest are hidden to us. Presumably, on a simple level, the Acharonin is the 7th day of Shabbat, and that which God created on Shabbat, which is often referred to in the Zohar as Me'ein Olam Haba, it's a spiritual day, right? There was a creation, but it's not something that we can readily see. It is hidden to us. It's something which we need to access, right? So, but the actual creation, the physical world around us that we see, was all created in 6 days. So, Barashit, God created the 6 days of creation, each day being a vehicle for the creation of part of the world that we see around us. Avol chaminon goy sitre bereshiti amar hachi. But nonetheless, even though, right, we cannot necessarily see the seventh, but we can see around us, right? We can see is the is the following secrets of Bereshit, of the creation. Gilifei aglif hahustima kadisha, right? Goy ma'oi dechad temiru denakit benakuda denaitz, right? The holy God, right, had engraved, right, or into a hidden spot, right? That which was all hidden into one small spot that was embedded within this place where he engraved it. Now, what I'm going to say here is something as follows. One of the things that almost all interpreters of Bereshit notice is, from no matter whether they're coming from a mystical or non-mystical approach, doesn't matter, is the idea, and Rambam and Mor Nevuchim points this out as well, and you can just read it. You don't have to be a great commentator to see this. It says, Bereshit, in the beginning, bara Elokim, God created et hashamayim v'etarz, the heavens and the earth. And then it goes on to say the development of the next 6 days. So one easily understands from those words that there was a beginning moment that God created something within which there was the potential for everything else to now develop. So all the heavens and the earth were created in the beginning. And then there were 6 days. So the rest of the 6 days is somehow using that which was created in the beginning and then using it to develop into the rest of the world that we see around us. So that's what he's saying here. He's saying, so we see right away from the word Bereshit that God created in the beginning all of the 6 days were created in the beginning, right? What does that mean? There was some sort of a spot within which the potential for everything. It's hard to ignore the similarity between this and the idea of the Big Bang, but I'm going to leave that aside for a moment. Hahu gelifei, right? In aglif v'tamir bay, right? Within that, he enveloped and hidden within it. Kiman degan, right? In other words, everything was hidden and enveloped within that spot. Kiman degan is kola techos maftecha chada, like someone who hides all of his treasures into a safe. All of his life treasures are in a safe. Techos maftecha chada, and there's one key, right, that only he can open. So what he's saying here, what is that God created everything, but there's a key. And what's that key? That key, of course, is the chachma, the wisdom, the rules that this world is supposed to run on, and the rules that are the basis for which all of this stuff that created in that spot are now going to develop and become a universe, right? And there's a key, right? So vahu maftecha gun is kol bei cholachada, and that key, right, is the key that opens that which is where everything is hidden in that one room. And it's interesting how we talked about the Heichalot literature of the 6 rivers right before, and then it starts to use Heichalot language here, because in the Heichal Chada, in that one antechamber, that one room where it's hidden, has this one key. Even though everything is hidden within that one room, right? The Heichalot literature is based on this idea, this concept, conceptualizing the heavens as different rooms, different chambers where one enters closer and closer until one gets to the innermost chamber, right? Ikra dechola bahu maftucha, right? Everything, hahu maftucha sagiru pasach, right? This is the key that can open and close that room, and everything and all of the values and everything is contained in there. It is worth the same as everything. And in there are incredible amounts of treasures, one upon another upon another. The potential that's contained within that room is immeasurable. It's huge, it's tremendous. And what are but there has to be gates. There has to be ways for us to communicate with that which is in that room, and there also has to be gates. Gates are understood as two things. They keep things in, but they also let things out. But there's a way to get in, and there's ways to get out. So the way that everything that's hidden in that room communicates is through 50 closed gates, 50 hidden gates, 50 mysterious gates. Iglifu la'arba sitrin, right? And they all open in the 4 different directions. V'havu arba'in, which in some verses arba'in v'tesha. So that amounts to 49 gates, all scattered around these 4 sides. Chad tara lesle sitra, but one of the gates, right? Is not on one of those 4 sides. We don't know if that gate is on top, right? So one would enter and leave from above or on the bottom. But because of that gate, that's the most mysterious gate of all. So there's 49 gates, and the 50th one being mysterious. Exactly what he's referring to, the only pattern I'm aware of in the Torah of 49 and 50 in the revealed Torah is the idea that of the 49 is 49, of course, is 7 times 7, the 7 cycles of Shemitah, and then the 50th year of Yovel, of Jubilee, of freedom, where things revert to the way they were. There's clearly some reference here, exactly what the connection is. I think some of you might have to use your imagination, exactly how this is referencing the gates through which, so all of creation is contained in here, and then there's 49 gates through which we can access it, and it can be accessed, and it accesses the rest of the world. And there's a 50th gate which we can't see. Many might be familiar with the idea of the 49 levels of holiness, and 49 levels of the opposite of holiness, of tumah, of impurity. That's also an idea that comes from the Zohar directly, that is not found, as far as I know, in earlier Jewish literature. This idea of 49 levels, is that the same as these 49 gates? I really don't know, and I'd be happy to hear if someone wants to teach me. So goy inun tarin isman ula chada, right? However, all of these gates, they all have the same key. V'chad asar dakik lo'olahu maftacha bei, right? And there's only one place where you can insert this key. V'lo esrashim ela berashimu d'maftacha. And the only way, and it's marked by the picture of that key. Right? And the only way it can be opened is with this one key. Regarding this secret, it says, Bereshit bara Elokim. In the beginning, right, God created. Bereshit, in the beginning, that key, which is the key that opens the room, where everything is hidden in there. Everything. Only Elokim, right, is that key. That one key represents God, right? So all the potential is there, but for the whole thing to happen, it requires God, right? All the potential is in that one spot. If you imagine a big bang where all matter is compressed into a tiny little spot, God is the one that has the key that says go, right? Develop a universe, right? And it is that key is that which opens and closes it. Vishit tarin kililan bay, and the 6 gates, right, are included, right, in this thing. So are these 6 gates the same as the 6 rivers? The 6 rivers that flow from God towards the world, that are represented by joy and happiness and love and desire? Maybe. Right? Bahu maftacha desagir pesach, all with the same key. Kad sigir inun tarin v'chol elon b'gaveh, right? When in the beginning, all of this is hidden, is closed, right? All these gates are closed, and they're all included in that one spot, right? Kidein vada ksiv bereshit mila galia bechlal mila stima, which is why the word bereshit is a word which is a conjunction of bara, is to create, which is to bring something out, and shit, which is is hidden. I think this can also be understood the opposite, right? Bara is he created, right? Something which wasn't before, and shit is referring to the six things that exist. So anyway, asar bara milas tima iu sagir v'lo patach. However, right, the word bara is always referring to something hidden, something which is a potential, which is closed and not opened. So bara, God created it, right? But then the development of it happened in the six, which is the 6 later days. The 6 later days where it became revealed, it became in the open. So again, and I made a mistake. The first mention in that sentence is bara shit. The part that's revealed is bara. Shit is the part that's open. Shit are the 6 days of creation when all that potential came into actuality. And bara is the creation of all that potential in a hidden box. So the concept, the idea that all of creation was in this little box, and exactly what he means by the 49, maybe if I come up with more ideas and understandings, I'll mention in a future lectures. But this is what he says, and this is how he understands the process of creation. I hope you enjoyed studying this together with me. This concludes chapter 8. I look forward to continuing this. We're going to continue this discussion between Rabbi Yudai and Rabbi Yose. I'm sorry, Rabbi Hiyyah and Rabbi Yose in the next chapter, chapter 9. Thank you again for joining me. I wish all of you a wonderful, wonderful day.